Hey everyone, it's Natalie. Um, I wanted to come on and just get back to my readings, my weekly readings, as soon as possible. The emergency situation with my clients is starting to calm itself, um, but I find, in truth, I'm just not able to go back to doing things as I usually do. Um, and I just wanted to talk about that and some other things, with the pandemic, um, and, the protests over the last couple of weeks after the death of George Floyd. The world is not the same, and I'm not the same. And as much as I love the tarot and I'm enjoying playing with it at home or being with it or, making use of it as a tool, reading for clients, etc., I'm just not ready to go back to unboxing, walking through decks. I'm not relating to them in quite the same way that I did before. And I'm not yet sure how to talk about that or how to be with that. And my training and background is such that really, it's not possible to just do, to go along and do things as they've always been done. If things have changed drastically, if things are changing, if they're in the midst of change, you stop and you address that first. And I thought about it, and if I were teaching, a literature class in a college or university, I would be doing the same thing. We might adapt the work that we were, doing or looking at in order to say, okay, this is happening. We did that in 2014, and again in 2015, around Michael Brown and the protests in Ferguson. It's, I remember doing it a few times actually in the last several years before I stopped teaching there in 2018. So sometimes it's just necessary. I think it's just really necessary. And this is definitely one of those moments. Things are not as they were. The biggest fear that I have right now, and I feel it physically in my body, is just that everything's going to go away. Everybody cares so much right now. People are showing up in droves in the streets as white allies. And at some point, as it has with every other conflict of this nature that we have seen in the last, say, 10 years, really throughout American history, but, in my lifetime, I'm most aware of the last 10 years because though I've spent the last 10 years back in the States living here. It's just going to go away again. And I was listening to an interview this morning it was from CNN, and I don't think it was from today. I just caught up with it today. With a guy called Carl Sudler. He's an assistant professor of history at Emory University in Atlanta. He's young. And he was talking to one of his mentors in his department and expressing a lot of excitement and hope, over the sheer number of white allies in the U.S. and worldwide that are coming forward. And as I was listening to him talk, I remember sitting there thinking, I wish I could feel that enthusiasm. I wish I could feel that hope. I really do. I really wish I could. Um, and he then finished by saying, as he was talking about it, he said, history tells us, he was talking to one of the guys in his department who's a professor that's been there for years, is a mentor. And the mentor said, I understand your excitement, and it is pleasant. It's nice to see. But he said, you got to remember that history tells us, this is a quote, history tells us that white allies will eventually disappoint us. It's just a matter of how much disappointment. So, I'm thinking about all of this. I'm hearing it. I'm listening. And, I've been in that situation before. I've been there where everybody gets on the boat together. I was part of a university, it's where I left Britain and came to the US. And of course, there were many situations that happened in Britain as well, but right now we're in the States, so I'm going to stay focused here talking about this. It's hard to talk about because, we would have these lengthy meetings and faculty development sessions that would last sometimes a week at a time. Certainly, like when I was indoctrinated into the university as a new faculty member, and I should say the name of it, it was DePaul University in Chicago. And if you do a search on situations where there's been racial prejudice and issues with racial prejudice in faculty at DePaul University, you'll get quite a hit. Especially pay attention to the links from Inside Higher Education. I know several of the professors, between the years of, say, 2008 and 2012, who went up for tenure and were not granted tenure, who were people of color. So, we spent maybe a full day talking as new faculty members being, brought into the university about the need for diversity, what that means, how it's done. I went twice. There was a kind of like a presentation. It was optional, but it was like a 2-day seminar that you could go to about inclusivity and what inclusivity means, why it's important, how it plays out, etc. It was beautifully done. Again, I went twice. I brought new faculty members with me each time. That was just like university-wide stuff, like in our own department. Again, we had all of these dialogues and conversations and everything, and people would be 100% on board. We're going to do this. It's going to happen, and then when it came down to making really difficult decisions around things that have been brought up in these faculty meetings, everyone would just abandon ship. And I was frequently the last person standing, trying to move forward with something, and it made me an outsider. And it was such that, my friends in the diversity and inclusivity office just for our theater school said, don't push this any further. Don't push it. You're putting yourself at risk. It's not your job to put yourself at risk. Let us help you do that. or it would be, I would say I would sometimes be the last white faculty member standing. My very good friend Phyllis would always be standing with me. She was the only African American member of the faculty. There's no way I would have abandoned her in that. And interestingly, she used to comment, like, if she left the room during regular faculty meetings, I would be attacked by the rest of the faculty. It didn't go down well. It didn't go down well. So, that's what I'm scared of when we're moving forward. This is great. I'm really glad. I'm excited. This is the most white allies I've ever seen coming forward. And I'm excited, and I'm really not able to feel that excitement to the degree that I would like to, because I'm really scared about what happens when this moment calms down and we move forward and everybody's tired and everybody feels worn down and we all just want it to go back to normal again. I don't think, if you are identifying as a white ally, I know that I don't have to say to you that you already have the sense or understanding, that, if you're Black, there is no going back to bringing things back to normal again. That's not how it works. You know that, right? So then what do we do? How do we redefine what normal is? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But it sure does feel like a really good direction to go in to begin looking real hard, at how do we do that? How do we do that as a spiritual community? How do we do that as a community of allies? Because probably you're not going to be watching this unless you regard yourself as such, right? And frankly, I'm prepared to lose a lot more subscribers. My number of subscribers, interestingly, has been up and down over the last week since I posted the first video. I lost several subscribers immediately. And then several more came on board. And then I lost track because I don't really care. And actually, subscribers is not actually why I'm here. It never has been. And that's why you'll never hear me say like and subscribe. If you do, I've lost the plot, so let me know. But that's never been why I'm here. Yeah. I guess that's just kind of where I'm coming from this morning. I want to do a tarot reading, and I probably will follow through with it and post it. But I can't get to that place without this first. Last Sunday, one of the teachers from my Dharma tradition that I'm a part of now put up a really helpful video. I will link it below, so that if you want to have a look at it, it's on Facebook. It'll probably be moved at some point to YouTube. It usually is at some stage later. But I'll link the Facebook so that you can see it if you want to. Why I love this particular Dharma tradition. It's run by women, and of course the reason that I've had to leave a lot of Dharma traditions is because it was run by men who were really patriarchal and really couldn't cope with me at all. But this is a tradition run by a lot of women who are just like me from that perspective, and they're also very inclusive. So they have several Dharma teachers who are African American that teach and lead retreats and dialogues at their with their organization frequently. And they have obviously several that are from Tibet, that are actually Tibetan. Anyhow, the teacher, Lupan Chandra Easton, mentioned a documentary that she had just watched about Toni Morrison. I actually just subscribed to Hulu so I can watch it, because it was the easiest way to do it. And she mentioned a particular quote from the documentary, where a journalist interviewing Toni asked her if she still encounters racism, and if so, how did she feel that things, had changed or were changing, around racism. My first response to that was just, why would you, if you're interviewing Toni Morrison, why would you ask her that question? Does she still encounter, but, asking her advice about what do you think we need to do moving forward, etc., was a good idea. And so I transcribed the quote because I feel like I've been sitting with it all week. I'll just read it. So she says, so he asks her, how does she feel about all of this? And she says, how do you feel? Don't you understand that the people who do this thing, who practice this racism, are bereft? There's something distorted about the psyche. It's a huge waste, and it's a corruption. Sorry, I couldn't read my own handwriting. It's a huge waste, and it's a corruption, a distortion. It's a profound neurosis that nobody examines for what it is. It feels crazy. It is crazy. It has just as much deleterious effect on white people as black people. If you can only be tall because somebody is on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And my feeling is that white people have a very, very serious problem. And they should start thinking about what they can do about it. Take me out of it. Take me out of it. She's right. She's right. She faces, somewhat. She is sadly, we've lost Toni Morrison. She died a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago. It is not the responsibility of the African American community to do something about this. It's our responsibility as the white community. Something she says here about power, she says, if you can only be tall because somebody is on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And when I listen to Donald Trump say things like dominate them, dominate the streets, you've got to dominate. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that, we've heard him say those words over the last week. It's terrifying. It tells us, it really tells us everything we need to know about this mentality. When you think about the way that man has shaped American business culture over the last 20 years with with shows like with his show like The Apprentice, with his ghost written book that he never really wrote, um, and through his presidency, his mindset is about that. It's about putting someone else on their knees so that he can literally be tall. And it's not just him. The sense is, if something's not right, and I'm going to lose power, the way I gain it back is by putting someone else in their place. I mean, think about the number of times that in order to put someone in their place, we jump to shame and shaming. It's so fast and so immediate. It's an unconscious reflex. And I don't know for sure. I don't know. I feel like that's a place to start. It's a place to start looking at how, we understand our own relationship with power. Is that if we feel shame, we tend to feel that someone is robbing us of our power. So if we can reverse that role, and I'm the one who's shaming you, then I somehow have gained power. I would say ultimately that is, it's in my own life. In my own life, I can only speak from my own experience. I don't know anything else, frankly. That's really all I know. But in my own experience, when I've been caught up in that power dynamic, and it can happen so fast and so quick, it doesn't matter how much work I do on it, and over how many years, it will sometimes still arise. It will sometimes still arise. And if I don't work on it every day, if I don't approach every single day with the intention of watching that, of being awake to it, it can creep in because it's so deeply ingrained. When we look at these patterns that are so deeply ingrained in who we are, we begin to see how much work there really is to do there. And that, that's the work that counts. If any of us want compassion, and we want to find out what real power looks like, I feel we'll find it through integrity. Your integrity will tell you the minute that you've done something that violates it, once you're really in touch with what it is and what its voice is. And when you violate integrity, it will make you feel anxious. It will make you feel, it'll kick up all kinds of dust in the mind, in the brain, while it tries to justify. It'll create narratives around why something was or wasn't okay. But when you do something that's in harmony with your integrity, when I do something that's I have to be careful here. When I do something that's in harmony with my integrity, I feel calm, and I feel resolved. And I may grieve a lot because I don't always get the result that I would hope for. But in the end, I know that I made a choice that was right. The integrity, keeping your integrity intact is not the same thing as keeping your ego intact, or keeping It has absolutely zero to do with other people's perceptions of you either. It will very rarely have anything to do with that. If you stick with it long enough, people will begin to see who you are anyway, and then they will begin to respond to you accordingly. But yeah, it won't help you manage your perception as other people see you. It won't do you any good there. But it is a lot more peaceful to live that way, for me, than the other way.